So it's a tale as old as time. The flagship versus the budget alternative. Google has their A series, Samsung has their Fan Edition models, and alongside the 13, OnePlus is also launching the 13R. The 13 is obviously going to be the better phone overall, but there's a $300 difference separating them. So what are you really getting or giving up for that extra cash? At first glance, they look very similar. Both have that off-center camera island, but the curved back glass and tapered frame design of the 13 makes it look and feel thinner even though it isn't. It's also way more comfortable to hold thanks to all those curves. The 13R has that boxy iPhone-like industrial design, and I do appreciate the matte finish on the side rails. It does a much better job hiding fingerprints. IP rating is an easy one for the 13 though, thanks to its better certification. IP69 seems like the latest innovation they're pushing on phones this year. As outrageous as it sounds, there's videos of people literally dropping their IP69 rated phones into a boiling pot of water, and it apparently survives. But honestly, the real world difference is that the 13R can't be submerged in water at all, while the 13 should be fine for accidents in the pool, bathtub, or even the toilet. Both phones have amazing displays, but there's three notable differences between them. The biggest one being that the 13 uses a quad curved screen, while the 13R has a completely flat one. I'm not gonna even lie, the curved glass looks more elegant, but with that being said, I still prefer a flat display, mainly because it's just easier to find and install glass screen protectors on flat screens. If you don't plan on using a screen protector, well, the 13 does have a tougher glass, which is great. It also has a slightly sharper display, but I honestly can't tell the difference between them, and you likely won't either. So display-wise, it really boils down to whether you want a fancy-looking quad curved panel or a more practical flat one. Speakers are always a bit subjective, but to me, the 13 does sound better. It's got a little bit more low end, it's a little more warm sounding, and it's just more pleasant to listen to for music and calls. The 13R almost sounds tinny in comparison. If you consume a lot of media on your phone, yeah, I'd lean towards the 13 then, especially paired with a slightly higher resolution screen. The OnePlus 13 has the better fingerprint scanner. It's in a more natural position for the thumb and won't bug out even if your thumb is wet because it's ultrasonic. On the other hand, the 13R uses an optical scanner. Besides not working with wet hands, it also needs to light up to read your fingerprint, which can get a little annoying at night. In my review of the OnePlus 13, I raved about how good the haptics are. The 13R feels pretty good too, but when you use both side by side, you can tell they use a slightly better haptic motor on the pricier model. Battery is an interesting one. I'll say it right now, for light to medium usage, both phones are likely 2-day batteries for most people. The 13 might last a little longer, but at the end of the day, you're getting amazing battery life with either phone. Both have 6,000 mAh batteries, but the material type is different. The 13R uses the typical lithium-ion batteries, but the 13 is using new material type that's more energy dense, saving them space for things like the wireless charging components. The 13 is capable of up to 50 watts wireless charging if you use a OnePlus wireless charger, or 15 watts otherwise. It can also do reverse wireless charging, which is great for charging earbuds. The 13R doesn't support wireless charging at all. Both come with power bricks in the box. However, you get an 80-watt one with the 13 and only a 55-watt with the 13R. The difference in charging times between the two is around 20 minutes. OnePlus does sell a 100-watt dual charger on their website, so you can pick one of those up to get faster charging on the 13R as well. But that's extra money on a phone when you're trying to save money. A less obvious difference between the two is that the 13R is using a USB 2.0 port versus the USB 3.2 Gen 1 on the 13. What's the difference? Well, the 13 can transfer files up to 10 times faster. Personally, I don't remember the last time I plugged my phone in to transfer files, but if it's something you do regularly, the 13 can potentially save you a lot of time. Performance-wise, the Snapdragon 8 Elite in the OnePlus 13 is brand new, more powerful, and it's more efficient. The 13 is also available in a beefier 16GB of RAM and 512GB of storage option, which isn't an option on the 13R. The 13R is powered by the last generation Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, and the whole idea of using last year's flagship chip in a mid-range phone is one I can totally get behind. I can sit here and tell you that the performance jump this generation is massive and how impressive the benchmark numbers are, But the reality is, you likely won't notice the difference between them unless you're doing some serious heavy gaming or running emulators. Look, I get it. FOMO is real. We see the latest and greatest, and we don't want to settle for something less great. But keep in mind, the chip in the 13R was literally the best chipset you could find in an Android phone less than a few months ago. Maybe if on-device AI takes some serious leaps, or we start seeing more AAA games or pro-level apps come to Android, then maybe, just maybe, the extra power might be a good investment. Personally, I wouldn't be concerned about performance between them. Both will be plenty of power for many years, especially since OnePlus is committed to supporting both phones for the exact same amount of time. Look, it's gonna be no surprise that the pricier phone has the better camera, but the real question is, just how much better is it? Well, for my testing, the 13R isn't as bad as I thought it would be. It has worse hardware and lacks the better Hasselblad processing, but this isn't some terrible camera that's unusable. It holds its own, but if you look close enough, it's clearly a step down. It also doesn't have features like action mode for fast-moving subjects, and there's no macro mode for close-up shots either. The 13 also has a wider ultra-wide lens and better reach with its 3x telephoto compared to the 2x one on the 13R. But once again, the 13R ain't looking too shabby. Selfies are fine on both, but I prefer the processing and depth on the 13. It can also shoot 4K 60 FPS video across all its lenses, whereas the 13R can only do it on the main lens. Even the selfie video is capped at 1080p, which feels a bit dated for 2025. Look, I'm not trying to make this into a full-blown camera comparison. The 13R will get the job done, but the OnePlus 13 has the more versatile camera system, better image processing, and is the one to get if you're after a better camera experience. So if you made it this far, you might be thinking, wow, the 13R has a lot of compromises. Maybe I should just spend the extra $300. And honestly, I wouldn't fault you for thinking that. OnePlus has done a great job making the 13 the more attractive option in a lot of little ways, especially when you focus on all the differences. But here's the thing, after using the 13R, I'd say the only truly noticeable difference for me is the camera. Everything else, not really a deal breaker. In fact, I'd argue the flat display on the 13R is actually a pretty big selling point. It's more practical and lets you use glass screen protectors. So if you're eyeing the 13R and don't care much about camera performance, I'd say go for it. It's a solid phone, saves you money, and definitely holds its own. So what do you think? Are you team treat yourself with the OnePlus 13 or team why spend more when I don't need to with the 13R? Let me know. As usual, thank you so much for watching. Until the next one, I'm out of here.